I had recently turned 28 and was finally able to move out of my parents' house. This was when I was still single, so I was living all alone. I remember one night I woke up around 12:30 a.m. to a loud shattering sound. At first, I just lay there in my bed trying to make out what had woken me up, but then I heard it pretty clearly. Could it be a cat? No. When I listened more carefully, it was the sound of things being shuffled around and drawers opening, and it was all coming from downstairs. The thought of a burglar just a flight of stairs away, with me being all alone in the house, had me a little worried. Instinctively, I reached for my cell phone underneath my pillow and tried to unlock it with my fingerprint, but quickly discovered that it had run out of battery and was powered off. I looked around for my charger frantically, but then I remembered I'd left it on the couch downstairs. Having no choice, I went to my dresser drawer to get my power bank, but just then, I heard the sound of faint footsteps coming up the stairs. They were drawing gradually nearer. Panicking, I grabbed my hockey stick and ran towards my closet and opened its doors, climbing inside. I hid amongst my clothes as I strained my ears. I heard the sound of the doorknob turning, followed by the door creaking open. I dreaded what was about to come next. My bed wasn't made, and it looked slept in, so the intruder might guess that I had heard him and come looking for me. I put my hand over my mouth to control the sound of my ragged breathing. My heart was beating so loudly that I was actually scared that it would give me away. I heard the sound of footsteps coming my way, towards the closet. I firmly grabbed the hockey stick in case worse came to worst, but the footsteps just passed along. I heard the bathroom door opening. It was obvious that he was looking for me. What kind of a burglar made a racket and went looking for the occupants? It all appeared strange if you ask me, unless he wasn't a burglar. I realized what a dangerous situation I was in right about then. I could die tonight, and nobody would even know till they noticed I was missing. I heard the footsteps pass once again, and I heard him open the door and leave. I sighed. At least the threat had been delayed, but I couldn't spend the entire night there. I had to do something. I opened the door of the closet just slightly and peeked around. There was no sign of the guy. I tiptoed to my dresser and opened the drawer, making as little noise as possible. I pulled out my power bank and connected my phone. Thankfully, it began to charge. I switched it on, immediately dialing 911. The call connected, and I told the 911 dispatcher what had happened. Just then, I heard a sound above me, as if someone was walking in my attic. Was he just trying to frighten me out of my mind? Thankfully, the dispatcher got my location and told me the police would be on the way. I hung up. If he was still in the attic, it meant that he wasn't down here. I saw my escape route. I opened the door and looked around at the landing. No one was there. The only sound that could be heard was the one coming from the grandfather clock downstairs. I planned to run to the kitchen and intended to escape through the back door which led to the backyard. I made my way towards the stairs, but I tripped over something and made quite a noise falling down. Crap. He must have heard me because almost immediately I heard the intruder begin to run down as he made his way to the stairs. I bolted for the kitchen door and ran outside as fast as my legs could carry me. I didn't stop until I was at the corner house on the street. Just then, I made out the blue and red lights in the distance. The cops had arrived. They searched my entire house. Nothing was stolen. The plants in my yard had been damaged, which meant he probably entered through the back door somehow. After this incident, I was afraid to live alone for a while until I upgraded my security system. But to this day, I keep wondering, if he didn't steal anything, then what was his motive? Thinking of all the possibilities makes me shudder every time. When I was 8 years old, my dad was a video game creator, and his work gave him the luxury to work from home most of the time. I had always had at least one parent or the other at home with me. But one day, my mom's car broke down on the way home from work. It must have been around 5 p.m. because that's when she got off of work. So while my dad went to go pick up my mom, I found myself alone at home. It was just a regular evening, and I was happily watching cartoons, feeling excited having the house all to myself for once. Out of nowhere, there was a loud knock on the door that startled me. I was curious and a little nervous, wondering who could be at the front door. Perhaps it was the mail. Perhaps it was my parents and they forgot the key. I cautiously looked at the small windows near the top of the door and saw a really tall man standing outside. Stupidly, I opened it. I remember thinking that the man was much taller than my dad, maybe around 6.5 to 7 feet tall. He looked very formal in his fancy black suit, which seemed strange for our neighborhood. He said he was from a company called Global Solutions and wanted to talk to my parents. But something about him made me feel uneasy. His eyes were darting around quickly behind me as if he was searching for something or someone. It made me think he might be here to cause trouble or he had a secret plan to rob us. What made it even weirder was that he had another person with him. The other guy looked a bit messy and didn't have the same kind of nice uniform. They didn't seem like they belonged together. The entire thing seemed shady. I started to wonder if they were really from the same company or if something suspicious was going on. I didn't want to give the stranger any information about my parents. I felt that something was off, so I made up a story and told him that my parents were just next door, which, thinking about it now, was probably a mistake. His lips twisted into a peculiar smile. Weirdly, instead of leaving, he said he would wait with me. I started to get scared and tried to close the door, but he put his foot between the door and the frame to stop me from closing it. He was much stronger than I was, and there was no way I could move him. Fortunately, just then, the phone started ringing. I ran towards it hurriedly, telling the guy it was probably the police calling me back. I don't even remember who was on the other end, maybe just an automated message, but amazingly, the man believed me and left with the other person in a hurry. I quickly locked the door behind them. It was stupid of me to open it anyway. After they were gone, I noticed that they had actually broken one of the windows in the door. It was cracked and blurry, so you couldn't see through it properly. I couldn't tell if the man did it on purpose or if he accidentally broke it because he was so strong. It made me think that maybe they were trying to steal things from our house. When my parents came home, I told them everything that happened. They asked me about the men and the company, but I didn't have much information to give. They had never heard of that company before, and thankfully, the men never came back. It was a scary experience that's left me paranoid. Now that I'm a father myself, I make sure never to leave my kids home alone. The year was 2002, and I was around 11 or 12 at the time, living with my mom. My grandfather had recently passed away, and so my grandmother, who we called Nan, moved in with us. I didn't have a father figure growing up, since my dad was never in the picture, so our family was stressed and dysfunctional. One Friday night, my Nan needed to go to the hospital for a routine checkup, but we couldn't find a taxi. My mom had to take her, leaving me home alone for the first time. As they left, my mom locked all the doors and windows, telling me to watch TV until they returned. Sitting on the couch, The realization of being alone hit me. It was both exciting and scary. I chose to follow my mom's instructions, though I was tempted to run around and do what I wanted. The reality TV show that was on didn't hold my interest, and boredom set in. Back then, we only had cable TV. Suddenly, out of the blue, came a knock at the back door, which startled me. Remembering my mom's warning, I stayed on the couch, feeling increasingly worried. I wondered why someone would be knocking on the back door instead of the front. Our backyard was small, so it puzzled me why anyone would make their way there just to knock. I had two choices: answer the door or ignore it. The knocking persisted and my fear grew. The situation escalated when the person started forcefully twisting the doorknob, trying to open the locked door. The sound echoed through the house. I was terrified, unsure of what to do. Before leaving, my mom had closed the curtains to prevent anyone from seeing inside. They continued to turn the doorknob, and the knocking persisted for what felt like an eternity. Then, the intruder began banging on all the windows, one after the other, but there were no voices or calls for anyone in the house. My mom and Nan were still at the hospital, or hopefully on their way back. I was torn between hiding and ignoring the disturbance, or investigating the situation. Now, being 11 years old, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to go check on the back door. However, I realized that something just wasn't right. If it was someone we knew, they would have gone directly to the front door, or at least called out the names of someone living there. That set alarm bells off in my mind, and I finally figured out that it was a stranger trying to break into the house. The thumping sound had become heavy now. The stranger was probably using all their weight to break down the frail back door. I realized they would probably break through soon, so I decided to grab a knife from the kitchen. I stood there with a 9-inch kitchen knife, ready to pounce on the stranger as soon as they barged inside. I couldn't quite believe what I was doing. A part of me felt like I could have died right there, and that someone was going to storm past me and possibly kidnap me or steal everything from the house. The wait was torturous, and I just wanted my fears to settle once and for all. There wasn't much to steal, considering my family was really struggling. It was then that I heard the familiar sound of a car engine approaching. Just like clockwork, came the sound of heavy footsteps running away. Relief washed over me as I realized that whoever it was had fled the scene. The front door unlocked, and just as I was about to lose it, my mom and Nan entered the house. My mom's eyes widened in surprise as she saw me standing near the kitchen door, tears streaming down my face, and a knife in my hand. She rushed over to me, concern etched on her face, and asked what was wrong. I managed to gather my thoughts and told her everything: the knocking, the banging on the windows, and all the fear that had consumed me. My mom listened attentively, her expression filled with shock and worry. She hugged me tightly, reassuring me that I was safe now. She called the police to let them know what had happened. They came by eventually to investigate, but never found any good leads as to who the stranger was. From that day forward, my mom made a promise never to leave me alone, but I still remember that day as the first time I experienced pure fear.